Hi, I'm Rhiannon Faith, and I'm here to tell you a story. This is travel edition since it's summer. People travel quite a lot during the summer or taking summer vacations. I thought I would share a little bit about some of my travel adventures. And it's a bit delayed because I have been traveling a fair amount. And so I hadn't had an opportunity before now to really sit down and do a video. Not that they take that long, but honestly, it's kind of a Sunday routine for me. And a lot of the last handful of Sundays, I have been in flight or arriving home and trying to decompress after travel. So I hadn't gotten to it. When I was a kid, we didn't travel. That was not a thing. Traveling was for people who had the means, and we did not. And so the only quasi vacations we ever took were integrated with relocation. So we moved from Knoxville, Tennessee to San Diego. During that trip, we stopped a couple of places along the way, and that was sort of our quote unquote vacation. And we had gone on a handful of camping trips and things like that with family that were otherwise organizing it. That wouldn't have been something that my parents would have done. My dad was more, it wasn't a thing back then, but he would have been more of a glamper. He was not one for the roughing it sort of experience. So traditional camping environments would not have been his thing at all. And then as I became an adult and had my own kids, we didn't do a lot of travel except for practical travel, traveling to visit family. So for example, my parents relocated back to Washington State when my brother was one, so my daughter was one as well. And during that time that they were up there, I would try to go up at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, to visit and see my brother and all that good stuff. And so Cheyenne and I, when she was a baby or young, we would travel. But traveling with your children, or traveling with a toddler, is super different than traveling as an adult. And I had a conversation with one of the doctors I worked with. She was doing talks in various locations, and she was talking about how she was popping over to one place to do a speaking engagement and another place and travel over to this for continuing medical education seminar. And I thought, gosh, how curious. I mean, that sounds sort of exhausting. But again, it was through the lens, my view of that travel was through the lens of how tiring it would be to be traveling back and forth with my children. That was my only experience, was with other people. And it creates its own stress because when you're in mom mode, you've got to be coordinating for everyone else, and you're obviously carrying things for other people and keeping track of them and their needs and managing your own stuff on the back end of that, which isn't always like the greatest dynamic. In any event, I hadn't traveled by myself, so I had no context for this. And then one of my birthdays, I received kind of a surprising offer to go and visit my sister for my birthday. And so I jumped at the opportunity. It was the first time that I could recall in my more adult life where I was traveling by myself, just for the sake of going and doing something for myself. And let me tell you, it was a revelation. So I went up there, I got to fly by myself. I did whatever I wanted in the airport before my flight was ready. I, got a snack that was a little bit more expensive than I would normally because I didn't have to worry about paying for other people's snacks as well. And then I moseyed about and I read a book and I wrote and I did all the things that I would normally not be able to do because I would be focused on wrangling little people. And then I got on the plane and it was peaceful ride, even with turbulence, because I didn't have to worry or stress, are my kids going to be okay? If I have to pick between my children, if there's a life-saving situation, who do I choose? I mean, these are, I'd like to say that I'm kidding, but those are things that went through my head when traveling with my children all the time. And so I get up there and I just enjoy myself and I completely go along for the ride because I don't care and I don't have anybody else's demands to meet. And it was really sort of a birthday trip for me, so I could have more of a say, but my say was to just roll with it. So we adventured and explored and it was glorious. And then when I came home, it was equally relaxing, the plane ride home. And I just thought, my gosh, this was epic, and I want a dynamic where I can travel more often. And so I kind of set that in the back of my mind because my situation was still not going to support me traveling in any kind of meaningful capacity, whether it be with my kids or by myself for anything other than visiting family. So I just tucked that away someday. So as I was approaching my 40th birthday, I had set my sights on with like new enthusiasm. I am going to start traveling. So for my 40th birthday, I bought myself a suitcase because I decided I am going to start traveling. Now, funny enough, I bought myself a full-size suitcase, like a normal checked bag suitcase. It was a set, and there was a carry-on as well. But that was what I bought for myself because I was setting my sights on traveling. And funny enough, that came to pass, but not so immediately. I got to go on a work trip that year that was really fun. And the work trip was very cool. We were exploring a software program that I was excited about. And while I was there, we had free time in between things and in the evening. And so it was in Kansas City, Missouri, and I took the city. I went and explored all sorts of different things that I was curious about, and like wandered around museums and the city of fountains. So I went and spotted a bunch of these really remarkable fountains that are throughout. I went to the Hallmark Museum. That was so cool. Such a Hallmark fan. And then the Negroes League Baseball Museum, that place just, oh my gosh, such a heart tug. These guys, what they went through just to play baseball was extraordinary. And they were, the way they presented themselves and so put together and professional, and in spite of all of the adversity. And again, all they wanted to do was be able to play baseball. It was ridiculous, but I loved it. And they have all sorts of memorabilia in there from the leagues, and then all of their different like uniforms, gear that they used. I mean, it's crazy, some of the stuff, like compared to my son's just in high school, but back then he would have been a handful of years younger. What he was playing with then was still like levels above that type of equipment that they were using then. So the just like rudimentary gloves that were available. Of course, baseball has evolved over time, but as far as equipment and expense, isn't that fun? And then next to that was the American Jazz Museum, which was also completely epic because we grew up listening to a lot of jazz music. My dad is a huge jazz fan. My mom as well, but my dad was really, really into jazz. And so there was memorabilia from Ella Fitzgerald, and there Charlie Parker, Duke Ellington, anybody you could think of big in the jazz scene they had bits from them. Dizzy Gillespie, they'd have like lyrics. They had a dress that Ella had worn. They had trumpets. I mean, it was so cool. I love history, and I love history that kind of, each of those places were sort of themed history, of course, baseball and then jazz. But it was just so neat to explore and be able to wander through at my own pace, do whatever the heck I wanted because I was there by myself traveling. And it felt like such a liberating time. I mean, I cannot even say enough how enjoyable my experience was. And I tried food that I wouldn't have necessarily tried before. It was just like, what are all the things, I guess what went through my head was, what were all the things that were holding me back from just saying yes to an opportunity? Like, would I normally eat this? Probably not. Would it freak me out? Maybe. But did I try it and love it? Yeah. There was one thing I had at this great little restaurant not too far from my hotel. It was a pappardelle that was from squid ink. So the pasta was black, so rad, with lump crab meat and these sweet peppers and then garlic that had been roasted, and it came together with this like really luscious, delicious sauce. It was so good. And then I had this dessert there that was like so many different things that seemed like they wouldn't necessarily go together, and they did spectacularly. Not the least of which was this frizzled rosemary with a pistachio ice cream, and then some nuts with it. I mean, my gosh, it's just like making my mouth water. I'm thinking about it now. It was so good. It was like, I wanted to lick the plate. It was ridiculous. But it was so much fun. And even, like each day I'd get up and I'd walk the city before the first session just to wander and see and explore. And I dug it so, so much. I can't get enough of those kind of experiences. And so having set my sights on this potential for travel and, when am I going to get this opportunity? I really wasn't sure. And it was a sort of a slow transition to how am I going to make this work and how am I going to find a way to travel. And then lo and behold, as is often the case, God gives you abundantly more than you can ask for or imagine. He delivered by way of my now husband, who is a wonderful man and happens to work for the airlines, one of the airlines. And so we can fly standby for free. Hot diggity, let me tell you. Now, again, as I previously mentioned, I had always been sort of an anxious traveler where, got to get to the airport a certain number of hours ahead of time and be sitting at the gate and what if, and that's with the ticket. And it was because, of all the stress of, I'm flying with the kids and what do they need and how is this going to work? And I felt like I had to have everything planned and I had to have all the contingencies so that I could manage the chaos as it came up. So I would know all of the different routes and avenues just in case, which I've got to be honest, was entirely exhausting. And all of that anxiety was really just, a byproduct of feeling uncomfortable instead of just going with the flow. And so traveling standby is a whole exercise in going with the flow. And sometimes it does make me a little bit anxious, not often, but most of the time I'm really good with it. It is a spectacular game of, will I make the flight? So you make a plan, but it's a soft plan. And you look at the flights and you hope you've got a good idea of what flight you're likely going to get on. There's no guarantee. It will look great 24 hours ahead. It'll even look great 5 hours ahead. And then all of a sudden, the 36 seats that were on the plane are -2. And then you wonder to yourself, should I even go to the airport? Is it worth it? Am I going to make that plane? Who knows? You get to the airport and you just have hope in your heart because who knows? And lo and behold, everybody gets on the plane, including you. And you can never know ahead of time. It's not for everybody. I gotta be honest, it's not for everybody. My daughter traveled one time, my oldest, on a standby, and she was so unhinged. It was way too big of a jump for her. She needed to be back at a specific time, so standby travel wasn't an ideal dynamic for her. And we often cut trips a little bit short, if it looks like the next day is going to be kind of wonky on traveling back. And we don't travel on certain days that are likely to be problematic. Like traveling home on a Sunday is frequently not a good idea because everybody else has the same great idea. You know what we should do? Get home by Sunday. So sometimes we'll leave on a Saturday home instead, and that's all fine because the frequency, offsets it. But I would have never guessed the amount of travel that I would be able to participate in if I looked at, my life as it was when I bought that suitcase and my life as it is now. What a difference. But it's so fun how God just works that stuff out and how, the mindset shifts and you can completely embrace an entirely different mindset around travel. And that's what I have. It's just an adventure while I'm there. And if I make a flight, great. And if I don't make that flight, that's fine. I'll make another one. And if I have to travel to another city, well, there's something cool that I'll see there. So it's just, I'm digging it big time. And this comes off of a series of a rapid fire travel to Branson, Missouri, Washington State again, San Diego, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Key West. And I'll be traveling probably to Texas in a couple of weeks and then to Washington again. And so I have trouble thinking now, where haven't I gone? Or when did I go there last? I don't even remember it if we were traveling so often. And earlier this year, we got to go to Thailand, which was so incredible. I would have, theoretically, oh gosh, wouldn't it be fun to go and visit some of these places? And Thailand wasn't even on our go-to list. It just happened to be one of my sisters-in-law said, hey, my husband and I are going to be traveling there, and we were wondering if you might want to spend a week with us out here. And it was incredible. It was such a long travel experience. My goodness. Phoenix to LAX, LAX to Sydney, Sydney to Singapore, Singapore to Phuket in southern Thailand, and then a car, taxi ride from Phuket to Krabi, and good grief, the getting there I think took like 44 hours. Ooh, we were pretty spent by the time we arrived. And then we spent a whole week in Krabi and did all the things, which was, for another day, I'll like expand on that, but it was very, very cool. And then the coming home was equally crazy, but slightly less time. I think we got it done in like 34 hours-ish. But we were able to get a flight out of Krabi directly. So Krabi to Singapore, Singapore to Sydney, Sydney to LAX, LAX to Phoenix. And all of those plane rides, the LAX to Sydney flight was like 15 hours. And then Sydney to Singapore was like 8 or 9. If someone would have told me, hey, you're going to go sit on an airplane for, 16 hours, I would have laughed. That's cute. No, I'm not. And now it's like no big deal, no problem, that's fine. Figure out what you need and what you're going to do. And having done that now, actually, I feel even infinitely more comfortable and confident in doing other long haul flights if need be. So I'm hoping to go to Greece and Norway sometime in the next year or so, into Europe in general, and just kind of like jump around and see some things. But it's just so fun to be able to get out there and explore the world beyond the small confines of our backyard, our metaphorical backyard. But even when we go to places that are domestic, like this last week we were in southern Florida, just getting to check out spots that, some of them are rather touristy, but other things that are just random. It's just interesting to see how other people are living, what they do, and what they value or don't value, and just observe the environment beyond your general environment. So I've enjoyed it. I'm digging the travel, and I love that this is an opportunity, something that I can do and enjoy with my husband. And we have a lot of fun traveling and adventuring and doing all the things. And even while we're on these random travel adventures, doing things that I would have otherwise probably prior me would have said, no, you know what, I'll pass. So like one of the things we did in this Florida trip, we went to an alligator show and like exploration on the airboats around the different canals within the Everglades. And so at the end of it, there was an opportunity for an animal encounter, and you could hold an alligator and I'm trying to remember what kind of boa it was, but a large boa constrictor snake. And the guys all said, our sons were with us, and they wanted to hold the alligator, and my husband was fine holding the alligator, and I said, I want to hold the alligator and the snake. So I wrapped this massive snake around my neck and held the alligator. It was a small alligator, and his mouth was closed with like a rubber band kind of thing, a large band bit. Anyways, I definitively would not have volunteered to hold the snake. And I felt entirely emboldened to do this, and absolutely, let's say yes. And so for me, it was travel yeses and adventure yeses, but I wonder if there's something that you have said no to because of prior concerns or nervousness, anxiety, whatever it might have been, that maybe it's time for you to say yes to. So mine was travel and adventures while traveling. I'm curious what yours is, so drop it in the comments and come back again. I'll tell you another story. Thanks.